Hello, welcome to another edition of the Holistic Health and Sport Performance Podcast. Again, I'm your host, and we have another great and phenomenal athlete, Emma Spence. Um, Emma Spence is a 2022 World Championship Team Bronze medalist and made history. That's right, she made history, but it was the first time that Team Canada has won a team medal at the Worlds in gymnastics and qualified for the 2024 Paris Olympics. 2018, she was a Youth Olympic Games bronze medalist and on the vault, and again made history by becoming the first Canadian gymnast to win a medal at the Youth Olympic Games, and was selected by the Canadian Olympic Committee to be the flag bearer for the closing ceremony. She is a three-time Commonwealth Games bronze medalist with Team Canada, individual all around, and on the beam. In 2021, she was a Olympic alternative, and this will be her seventh year on the Canadian national gymnastics team. I think it's safe to say she had some success under her belt. How are you doing? Thank you so much for your time, Emma.
Of course, thank you. I'm doing good.
So just before we get into nuts and bolts, if you will, if you could just give us a fun fact. I have a broad range of audience, anywhere from junior and national athletes to, professors that would like to understand, what it's like to actually get that first practical experience from an athlete who competes at the highest level.
Yeah. I'd say a fun fact about me is that I also compete NCAA at the University of Nebraska for gymnastics. So, yeah, I'm currently here training and going to school in Nebraska.
Yeah, that might be, I think, a big time commitment there. I mean, you're doing college level competitions, and you're also competing at the highest level. That's crazy. Um,
Yes, super busy.
so, about the just the health and wellness. I think people don't really understand, or they don't get that first hand experience on understanding, like, just you know the health and wellness, the days in the day in and day out, on what has helped you, Emma, thrive in your avenue, sports and college and everything else.
I would say that the three main ones for me would be nutrition, sleep and recovery, and mental health. Especially in the world of gymnastics, there's kind of a different culture based on nutrition, just on how things have been in the past. And they are slowly changing, but it's some people still have the mentality of having to look a certain way and to be able to do well in gymnastics, which isn't necessarily true. And it's those barriers are starting to be broken over the last decade or so. But I think that was something very important for me to realize, I guess, and help me overcome to be a better gymnast, because I realized that I did need to start eating more, and I couldn't just eat a little bit like my younger teammates were doing to be able to perform as well as I needed to. And I just had to figure out what was best for me from that side of everything to be able to perform at my best, and kind of push aside those, I guess, assumptions that everyone says, and figure out and discover for myself what I needed to do best, or what I needed to perform at my best. And then the sleep and recovery side of it, there's like the sleep, obviously, then there's like stretching, rolling out, cold tank, getting treatment, sports psych, all that side of it I think is very important. And that goes into mental health as well, just making sure that I'm mentally feeling as good as I can. And yeah, just in the best mindset I can be leading into practices and competitions.
So, would you say, correct me if I'm wrong, like, I wouldn't say from the athlete's perspective, but I think from the the strength training, for the coaches, staff, personnel? Would you say I wouldn't say it's neglected, but would you say it's put on the back burner in a sense of like rest, nutrition, and like recovery? Or yeah, kind of is it just like, hey, you should do better, work, 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 hit the gym, or is it more, you know,
Um, yeah, so I get where you're going with this. I think that that was definitely how it is in elite gymnastics. It is starting to change slowly over the years, but that's definitely more how it's centered, or at least it was over the last 10 years. Like it is starting to change, but it's a very slow change because it's been like that for so long. Um, so there's definitely, it hasn't been as prioritized, like the nutrition, the recovery. It's more just train until you can't, and that's how you're supposed to be better without focusing on all the other outside components of it, which are important. And I've realized that. And one thing actually very interesting is that in college, that is mostly what they focus on. Like there's a lot more workouts in the weight room rather than just training for 5 hours straight. Like there's a lot more of a balance to keep your body strong and healthy. And then we have nutritionists that we work with regularly, good nutrition options here for our meals. It's a lot less just focused on just gymnastics, and it's ways you can improve yourself overall as a person and as an athlete, which makes you a better gymnast.
so you would say that actually happens more frequently at the collegiate level?
Yes, I would say in college it's a lot more focused on like everything, building your muscles, keeping your mental health okay, your nutrition, like everything's a lot. It's better spread out, I guess I would say, but in elite gymnastics, it's a little bit more old school, I
Yeah.
guess.
Yep.
And it's more just train until you can't kind of thing. Um, yeah, that's kind of what I've seen throughout my experiences of doing both so far.
Yeah. Well, that's at least you're being raw and honest. And I like it. Keeping it real is what I like to say. So, um, just walk us through on a day, like just on a day to day, this is kind of off the books question, but just as curious, someone who doesn't know gymnastics, like what's um, just the regular practice? I mean, I mean, how many hours you put in a day? What's a regular day in Emma's life looks like in this busy day, busy life?
Yeah, so there's different versions of my day depending on what kind of day it is, I guess, where I'm at in the season. For example, in preseason, I'll be here and I'll be doing classes, but we're training more regular schedule. But now that we're actually in season, our training schedule is a little bit different because we have to fit in time for those competitions, but also recover in between those practice days as well. So right now I have like classes in the morning, then I practice in the afternoon, and then we have our weights sometimes. Then I have like other meetings, sometimes tutoring, um, whatever I got going on really. But yeah, it all depends because sometimes we'll travel like on a Thursday and then compete the Friday and then travel back the Saturday and then have another competition on the Monday. So it's like trying to figure out the amount of off days so that you're able to recover, figure out what you're going to do because you're missing 2 days of classes.
Right.
So there's a lot of stuff like that that you have to figure out. So right now, my schedule isn't an exact schedule. Like, for example, I compete, it's going to be this Saturday and then the Monday and then the Friday. So it's like I compete the Saturday, I get Sunday off, compete Monday, and then probably like Tuesday off, train Wednesday, travel Thursday, compete Friday. So it's like all over the place. And then I have to fit in my school, figure out time to make up for that missed school.
Right.
It's really all over the place. But during preseason, it's a lot more just go to class, go to practice, do weights, tutoring in the like at the end of the day, stuff like that. So it's a lot more structured, but right now it's kind of all over the place.
Yeah. I mean, that's survival is the fittest, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, that's nonstop, go, 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 go. So that's um, you have a busy schedule. Um, if there is a younger athlete or there's somebody not necessarily um, in gymnastics, but competing at a high level, that's having doubts, fears, and they're questioning, is this for me? Um, and give that athlete some advice, if you will.
I would say one thing that I found that's really helpful for me is making sure you love what you're doing. For so long, especially in elite gymnastics for a while, I lost my love for this sport because it was just so, like, it wasn't very enjoyable because it was so structured on having to be perfect. And I was just burnt out and exhausted so much that I really wasn't enjoying what I was doing. And I was almost ready to quit before coming to college, but I decided I'd give it a second chance because it looked like it was such a good time. And I did want to enjoy the sport again. So I think being able to find my love for the sport has just helped me grow and be a better person and a gymnast. So I think overall, just make sure you're enjoying what you're doing and you just have a really good support system around you because that's when you really start to thrive when you combine it with having fun and doing it because you love it and not just because you have to do it.
Yeah. Wow. And I'm sure obviously you had a really good support system, your mother, your parents.
Yes, for sure. I have, yeah, and my sisters used to do gymnastics with me as well. I have two younger sisters, so it was like a family thing for a while. So it was a lot of fun growing up. Like that was what we did. We'd go travel to meets together and everyone would watch, and it was a really supportive system within my family. So that really made me fall in love with it when I was younger, for sure.
Nice. Um, did your mom and dad ever compete in gymnastics? I feel like it's coming down the family train right now. So,
No, they actually never did, which is interesting. They grew up in Northern Ontario, and I don't think they even had gymnastics there. Um, yeah, no, I think they did hockey.
oh, see, I'm a big hockey guy. I played hockey, of course. So
Yeah,
your parents, okay, so they're both hockey. Yeah, I played hockey all my
yeah,
life. I love it. So
yeah. Classic Canadian stereotype right there.
yeah, I mean, maybe I should quiet down, not fit that stereotype. No, I'm joking. So, um, is there, so before practice, moving on, right? So if before practice, whether you're at home alone reflecting, is there a favorite quote, verse, whatever that is, that you love it and you live by it? Is there something or mantra that you live by?
Definitely everything happens for a reason. That's always been my go-to. Whether there's something going on that's challenging or just like something random that's kind of bad that happens in my life, I try and go towards that saying and just think that, okay, this is happening for a reason. Even if I don't know the reason yet, there's something that's going to come out of this eventually. And that kind of keeps me going through those tough times too, just knowing that something good will come out of this. And usually I'm able to find out what that is, even if it takes a couple months. I'm like, oh, this happened because of this, or like this negative thing happened because, well, this positive thing ended up coming out of it. So having that outlook on life and not just in the gymnastics world, just like everything else that goes on in my life has been so important and beneficial for me.
And I'm curious, I have to dive in because I feel like, a lot of athletes, when it comes down to uncertainty, I mean, uncertainty can break a human soul, right? I mean, that really what it comes down to. And I'm wondering, where do you stem your confidence or your faith, whatever you call it, whether it's believing in a higher power or just having confidence in your family and you and your past success? Like, where does that stem from? I'm curious.
Yeah, honestly, I don't even know if I can like pinpoint it exactly. It's more just like trusting that what's meant to be is going to happen. Like I'm just, yeah, just trying to like let everything happen as it's meant to be. And even if something is like a little bit more challenging, it's like, okay, try and see the best out of it. So like I guess it's also based on like trying to see the positives through any hard situation and just letting it kind of happen how it's gonna happen. Cause I think that everything happens for a reason. So
Mhm.
going back to that, like I'm just like, okay, if it's happening, I guess it's supposed to be this way. And an example of this, I guess, goes back to so this is actually a really interesting story. So
Oh, please,
going
yes.
into Worlds last year,
Yep.
I was going to World Trials 2 days before I got really sick. I ended up testing positive for mono and strep. So this is like 2 days before going for into Worlds. And like I was doing pretty good all season coming out off of Commonwealth Games. So everyone thought I was pretty like guaranteed to make the team. So I
Mhm.
was super excited, feeling really confident. And then 2 days before I was told I'm not allowed to travel, I'm not allowed to practice. I had to take 4 weeks off of gymnastics. Like I couldn't go upside down. I couldn't do anything. I kept
Oh,
having to get like spleen ultrasounds and stuff to be able to get cleared to practice again. So that was so challenging for me because I was so set on being able to make that team. And then 2 days before, I was told that I wasn't able to do anything for 4 weeks, basically.
Wow.
So that's when I really started to think, or like use this, I guess, saying like everything happens for a reason. I'm like, I have no idea what this reason is right now. And this is super hard for me, but I'm like, okay, I'm just going to trust that this is how it's supposed to be. So after that, they ended up naming me the second alternate, like non-traveling alternate, just because of my stats from the last year. Even though I didn't go to trials, they still named me that. So I was like, okay, I guess it's something. But I was like, it's not on the team. So I wasn't very happy with it, honestly, but it's like, okay, I guess this is what it is. So I'm like, okay, I'm probably not going to go to Worlds because what are the chances of that? So I started training my college routines once I got back into it about a month and a bit later. And then about a week before they were supposed to leave for Worlds, someone got injured and they called me and they're like, okay, are you ready? Like you're going to have to step in. And I was like, okay, wait, what? Like I have to leave for 3 weeks in a week. Like I have to go to World Championships and I haven't been training my routines. I just got back into practice like a week before this because I finally got cleared from my mono and strap.
Wow.
So I had about a week to prepare, pack up everything to be able to leave for a month to go to England to compete at Worlds. So that was crazy. So I'm like, everything was so chaotic, and I was just trying to figure out what the best way to approach that situation was throughout that off time. I was like, hey, I'm going to use this downtime to just focus on my mental health, self-care kind of thing, because that was all I could really do. I couldn't even go into practice. And then I ended up making the world's team last minute, like a week before. And then we were there and we ended up making history. So like if I look back on that situation, it's like everything maybe does happen for a reason. Like maybe I did need that extra recovery time to be able to perform that way that I did at Worlds, even if it wasn't by choice. I was forced into that, but it did make me have a better performance in the end. So I don't know. When I look back on situations like that, that's when I really start to realize, like, oh, maybe it did happen for a reason. So,
Sand.
like, if there are challenging things in my life, I kind of try and approach it with that way. And it's like, even if I don't know now, maybe in a few months, I'll know why this happened. So that kind of explains that, I guess.
You have a really good positive mindset, and I like that. Like you really do. Um, you know, um, this is kind of the last segment of the podcast. So, um, Howard Thurman, who was Dr. Martin Luther King mentor, he talked about a thing called the inward and outward arena, really. And what that really just means is the stuff you see and the stuff you don't see, right? And I think, in my opinion, I think the stuff you don't see is the most important thing when it comes down to just learning, from the athlete, what they go through, that raw, transparent information. So first, we'll go through the inward arena. So like this could, whether it's mental, what's the stuff that mentally people don't see, whether it's you having your own personal whatever that is there things that you that has helped you successfully do what you do, inwardly speaking?
So, one thing, I've struggled with my mental health for a while now. I've been diagnosed with some mental health um, issues, I guess, through a couple of years ago, and it's hard for me to move past sometimes, especially having to do so much all the time. Like anxiety is a really big thing, and I've really had to work on learning how to overcome that and work through it. So one thing I guess that is really helpful is I do see a counselor like regularly, every week, every 2 weeks. Our sports psych here has been amazing, and even people back home before I came here have been really helpful for me. Just talking through things, even if I don't really have a problem, but just someone to talk to about everything that is just able to give me advice. That's been really helpful. I journal a lot too, especially if everything feels kind of cloudy and like
Mm-hmm.
congested in my head, I guess. So just writing everything out, getting it all out of my head so that I'm able to focus a little bit more and I'm less distracted has been very helpful. Meditation and like mindfulness kind of stuff like that is something that is also really helpful for me. Um, yeah, so those are some of my like go-to things, I guess, to keep my mental health more in check as
Mm-hmm.
well as I can, because I do struggle with it. So it's not always easy for me, but I found those strategies have been really helpful. And I also really like going towards like quotes and looking at stuff like that has been really helpful.
Hmm. So I'll play the how do I say this, the devil's advocate in the sense of, so most people would assume that people who compete at a high level don't struggle with mental health, and I think it's raw and it's real, and it's dope that you are willing to be honest and willing to say, I do struggle with this. This is not something lofty. This is raw and it's real and happens at the highest level. So don't let the stigma eat away at that.
Yeah. And then one thing, I guess a lot of it kind of did start because of this toxic environment in gymnastics I was talking about. I was in a rougher environment a couple years ago when I was training in Canada, and it really got to me. The environment I was in was not positive. It was pretty toxic, and I struggled a lot because of that, and it took a lot of work to get out of it. And I think that's so real for a lot of high level athletes, and I think that's why it's so important to be enjoying what you're doing, because if you don't, then all of these other mental health things just build up and get even worse because there's not that like you don't feel rewarded for all that hard work going into it either, because you're never really enjoying what you're doing. So I think that's why it's so important.
Yeah. And that transitions to literally the last part. So the outward arena, right? So this is what everybody else sees, the amazing performance. But I'm gonna dive a little deeper. And so what is um, outwardly speaking, um, when you're about to compete, right? Do you like, how do you, what's it like when you have a lot of people, a lot of tension, um, the press, the media, outwardly speaking, the kind of that materialistic stuff? Like, um, how do you hold steadfast during that? How do you hold your composure?
Yeah, so that one's interesting. So I feel like it's harder when I do better. So like if I have a really good meet, going on to the next one is a little bit more stressful because I feel like everyone's expecting more coming from me now. So coming after world championships and coming back to NCAA where the routines are easier. So technically it should like they're yeah, it should be easier for me to do. So I'm like, okay, it's technically easier routines. I just came off a really good meet. Everyone should probably be expecting me to do even better than I did last year. And I was really stressing myself out about that for no real reason. It's just something that I created, I guess. But what I did to help with this, which I've been doing before every meet now, is I journal, I guess, but I write out, okay, for all around, what are my goals for each event? What are my goals that I want to focus on? And I pick about 3 different things for each event. So it would be like beam, for example, confident dance, sharp landings, and like just like basic stuff like that. But just having those like 3 things to focus on instead of the bigger picture going into each event has been really helpful because it's just one thing at a time, one skill at a time, one routine at a time, instead of looking at the big picture and what everyone thinks about me. And I just think these little goals, like, okay, my goal is to be super supportive to my teammates and enjoy myself. So it's not even related to gymnastics, but it's like, okay, if my performance doesn't go well that day, at least I have these other things that I want to do. And if I do that, I feel good about myself and I still feel like I accomplished things. So it's about setting those little goals and like looking at one thing at a time instead of the big picture and what others are going to expect of me from it.
Right. And I feel like um, holding yourself to a controllable variable that you can control versus all this, right? All the stuff you can't. I feel like that would be, you know, that's exactly so the goal setting that you do. I think that's really good, actually. I do that. The last question is, what's the hardest part about gymnastics? I mean, what's the if there is, whether it's technique um, on the beam or on the floor, like give us what's the hardest? I mean, I know that's a mouthful, but like if you could give us what's the hardest part about gymnastics, what would it be?
Oh man, I don't know. I think gymnastics is actually so hard. And sometimes when I like actually think about it, I'm like, this is crazy. Like, how am I even able to do this? So like one thing I guess is the mental side of it. Like I don't really struggle with it as much, but I know teammates that actually like really do because trying to convince yourself that you're body is allowed to do all these flips, or like on something that's like this wide. It's crazy because sometimes it's like I like you really don't think you can do it because it's crazy. Like doing all the stuff that we do, or like I'm just gonna run and do a double flip and I'm just gonna be fine. So it's like convincing yourself that you're able to do that and be okay. So like I guess it's that mental toughness of being like, I can do this, I'm good enough to do this, and I've trained hard and I'm like ready. So I guess just being able to go for hard skills is probably one of the hardest things because it doesn't feel like it's natural or like it's supposed to happen because when you really think about it, it's crazy. So I don't know if that answers your question, but like that's kind of
Absolutely.
it. Like it's hard to do some of the stuff, just mentally get yourself to do it. And then once you're doing it, you're fine and your body knows how, which is also crazy in itself. But
Right.
yeah.
I would, I've looked up a couple things, and I did see like the beams, is that what they call them? That's freakish, is what I would call it. I mean, it's unbelievable that you can do twists and turns. Like I can't even imagine how much would put stress on your ankles and feet. And
Yes, yeah, actually another thing is injuries for sure.
that,
Um, Dealing through injuries and just body aches and because you can land in so many weird ways and it just hurts after a while. Your
I
body
bet
just
it,
hurts.
I bet it does. I bet it does. Well, there you have it, folks. Thank you so much, Emma, for your time. Good luck at the 2024 Paris Games. I mean, that's going to be, we'll definitely be rooting for you. Um, and I definitely appreciate your time as always.
Thank you.